This is the Digest and Heal podcast, unlocking those gut health secrets just for you. And today, we're going to do a deep dive into a surprisingly common issue after gallbladder removal, bile acid diarrhea. You might know it as BAD. It might sound like, just a simple stomach bug, but BAD can be really persistent and seriously impact your daily life. But don't worry, we've got you covered. We'll break down the science behind what's happening, and then, most importantly, we're going to give you some really practical strategies for managing it. Think like diet tweaks, helpful supplements, even lifestyle changes you can start today. And to help us kind of navigate all of this, I've got our gut health expert here with us.
Always happy to be here. It's crazy to think about. Almost 1 million people get their gallbladders taken out every single year. And, while most folks recover just fine, a surprising number of people end up dealing with some pretty, let's just say, not so fun digestive issues.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly are bile acids?
Okay, so you can think of bile acids as your body's natural emulsifiers, almost like dish soap, but for digesting fats. And they're made in the liver and they're stored in the gallbladder. So when you eat, let's say, a nice juicy burger or anything with fat, your gallbladder releases these bile acids into your small intestine.
Okay, so when I eat like a plate of French fries, my gallbladder releases bile acids to help break down all that fat.
Exactly. This is what helps break down those fats into, smaller molecules. So it's like breaking it down so that our bodies can actually absorb it. And also, one of the main functions of bile acids is to actually trigger movement of your intestines to keep food moving. And this in turn is actually help you have a bowel movement.
Okay, makes sense. But then what happens when the gallbladder is removed? Isn't that when things go a little haywire?
Well, yeah, and that's where the trouble can start because without that gallbladder to kind of store and regulate the flow of bile acids, they just continually drip into your intestines. And remember when I said earlier that bile acids make your intestines move and have a bowel movement? Well, now that function is pretty much sent into overdrive. And this constant flow can overwhelm the intestines. And that leads to, you guessed it, the dreaded diarrhea, especially right after meals. So instead of like a controlled release, like a leaky faucet of bile acids just constantly irritating your gut.
So this is what I've always wondered. Why doesn't everyone who has their gallbladder removed experience BAD?
Well, it seems it's like a combination of things. Some people are just more sensitive to the new excessive bile acids that are being released in the intestines. And also, the amount of fat in your diet probably plays a role afterwards. And there's some research suggesting that maybe even differences in your gut bacteria, or, what I call gut bacterial dysfunction, can also make this worse. But remember that, it also takes time, but most people's body will adjust to living without a gallbladder. For some people, it could take weeks to months, but for others, their body really never gets used to it and they need help.
So if bile acids are like triggered by fat, wouldn't eating less fat be a good starting point for managing BAD?
Yeah, so definitely one of the most effective strategies to start out with is reducing your fat intake. And this makes sense, right? Since the release of bile acids are essentially triggered by fat. So if you cut back on dietary fat, then that directly reduces the amount of bile acids that your liver is even making. So less fat, less bile acid, less dish soap to irritate your gut. But, what does that look like in real life? So, because, you do need some fat, but the goal is to aim for less than 20% of your total daily calories coming from fat. So, this might mean just making a few swaps, right? So, for example, choosing lean protein sources like chicken breast, turkey, fish, eggs, and legumes instead of, say, a fattier cut of meat.
Okay, so grilled salmon instead of a bacon cheeseburger. Got it. What are some other swaps we should consider?
So another easy one is swapping full fat yogurt for a low fat option. You can also try some whole grains like brown rice, quinoa, whole wheat pasta. Try to limit your fried foods, fatty meats, and full fat dairy products and processed snacks. Remember, healthy fats are in moderation okay as well. So we're talking about things like avocado, nuts, seeds, and olive oil, which are super healthy. So just be mindful of your fat intake. You don't have to be perfect. And also, when it comes to cooking methods, opt for things like baking, grilling, steaming, and poaching instead of frying.
Out with the deep fryer, in with the steamer. Got it.
Also, smaller meals reduce the demand on the digestive system. So try eating about 5 to 6 small meals throughout the day instead of maybe 2 or 3 bigger meals. Avoid overeating at any one meal. So try to eat to about 80% fullness.
What about specific foods we should avoid?
Right. So there are certain foods and additives that can certainly worsen diarrhea. So, as I said before, fried foods and fatty meats. Sometimes artificial sweeteners like sorbitol and mannitol found in sugar-free products can make things worse and give you diarrhea. And spicy foods can irritate the digestive tract as well. Also, things like coffee and alcohol.
It sounds like indulging is off the menu for a while.
Well, maybe, but remember, when it comes to avoiding certain foods, everybody's different, and what works for one person might not work for another. It's usually a process of trial and error, and you're always going to want to try to reincorporate foods another time so that you're not needlessly restricting. Usually, after a few weeks is good enough.
Trial and error is key. So we've covered reducing fat, being mindful of food choices. What else can help manage those bile acids?
But there's always going to be times where, you just can't resist and you got to have that little extra indulgence. And this is where soluble fiber comes in. It can be a real game changer. So soluble fiber has this amazing ability to actually bind to bile acids in your gut, and that prevents them from irritating your colon. So think about it like a sponge soaking up extra liquid, like trapping that dish soap before it causes problems.
Okay, I like the sponge analogy. Where can we find this magical fiber?
Yeah, so one type of fiber I always talk about is psyllium husk fiber, and it's like the MVP when it comes to managing bile acid diarrhea. It's available over the counter as a supplement, and it's actually really effective.
Any tips for taking it?
So I usually tell my patients to start off with about 5 grams or about 1 teaspoon, mix it with water before meals, try to drink it immediately before it clumps up. Slowly increase the dose to avoid gas or bloating, and you can take it about 2 hours before or after other medications to avoid interference with absorption.
Noted. What about getting soluble fiber from food?
Yeah, definitely. I always love the natural route. And you can find soluble fiber naturally in foods. So we're talking about things like oats, fruits like apples, bananas, oranges, pears, and berries, vegetables like carrots, Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes, and broccoli, legumes like beans, lentils, chickpeas, and peas, and flax seeds and chia seeds, which are easily added to things like smoothies or yogurt. So it's not always about popping a pill or supplement. It's about incorporating the right foods into your diet.
So load up on the good stuff. What about hydration? I mean, that's got to be important for everybody, right?
Right.
Especially when dealing with diarrhea.
Right. Hydration is super important. Fluid loss from diarrhea can lead to dehydration, weakness, fatigue, which can explain why you're always tired if you're constantly dealing with these symptoms. So try to drink at least 8 to 10 cups of water daily, try to get your electrolytes back, and limit caffeine and alcohol consumption throughout the day.
Makes sense. Now, I've heard a lot about probiotics. Can they be helpful in managing BAD?
Yeah, they can definitely be beneficial in this case. While I think not everyone needs to take a probiotic daily, I only really suggest them for very specific conditions and symptoms, and that includes potentially alleviating diarrhea after the gallbladder is removed.
Are certain probiotic strains more helpful than others?
Yeah, definitely. So certain strains like Lactobacillus rhamnosus GG, Bifidobacterium infantis, and Saccharomyces boulardii have shown some promise in kind of helping to rebalance your gut, which can get thrown off after your gallbladder has been removed. And you can find them in supplement form, or you can just enjoy them through fermented foods like yogurt and kefir.
So either pop a pill or enjoy some yogurt.
Nice thing about yogurt, especially Greek yogurt, is that it's lower in lactose than other yogurts because it's strained, so it's easier to tolerate if you're lactose intolerant. And with kefir, the probiotics can also help digest the lactose as well, making it an easier option if lactose causes you issues. So just another delicious and gut-friendly option.
Well said. We'll be back in part 2 to continue exploring ways to manage BAD, so stay tuned.
Looking for a fiber supplement that's clean, effective, and delicious? Try Bellway. Made with organic psyllium, real fruit, and absolutely no sugar, it's the tastiest way to support your gut health and stay regular. Packed with fiber your body loves, Bellway helps you feel lighter, healthier, and more energized every day. Find Bellway at Amazon, Walmart, or Sam's Club.
Okay, so we've got diet, fiber, hydration, probiotics. What about situations where those lifestyle changes aren't quite enough? What are the next steps?
So one option is digestive enzyme replacement therapy. And basically with that, you're supplementing your body with enzymes that help you break down food more effectively. Again, most people don't need to take a digestive enzyme replacement, but for certain conditions, it could help.
So it's not a cure, but it helps the body function better.
Yeah, it's like giving your digestive system like a helping hand when it's struggling to keep up, like giving it a little boost.
How do you know which one to choose?
Yeah, I mean, there are a ton of enzyme supplements out there, some available over the counter on Amazon and at your grocery store, and others available via prescription, especially for those who have something called pancreatic insufficiency, which basically means that your pancreas isn't producing enough enzymes on its own to break down food properly. And sometimes these supplement mixtures usually contain things like lipase, amylase, and protease, and these things target fats, carbs, and proteins respectively. So the thing with these digestive enzyme supplements, unfortunately, is that there isn't one that just works for everyone. Often the best way to go about this is to, search on Amazon, read their user reviews, use the search for gallbladder, see what other people are saying about it. There's probably going to be some trial and error here, and some people will say it works, others will say it doesn't. But if you find one that does, it's like a miracle.
So try different ones till you find one that works. Are there any other options besides those digestive enzymes?
Right. So when reviewing some of the comments on my videos regarding this topic specifically, a lot of people were actually saying that some people suffer from constipation after the gallbladder is removed. And this is where bile salt supplements can actually be helpful.
Wait a minute. I thought we were trying to reduce bile acids.
Right, and that's for people with diarrhea. But for people with constipation, remember that constant dripping we were talking about? Well, that could mean that the bile isn't concentrated enough to help digest and stimulate a bowel movement. So I could see a role for bile supplements here. Remember, bile salts are really important for emulsifying those fats, making them easier to digest. So supplementing with bile salts can sometimes help restore that balance here.
Oh, so bile salts can actually help in those cases.
Yup, exactly. And there is some nuance here. So I do want to say that it's super important to use only these supplements under the guidance of a healthcare provider and to determine the right dosage, the right type of supplement, because, there could be also interactions with other medications you might be taking, or if you have some sort of pre-existing condition. So it's always important to have that guidance.
Safety first.
Yeah.
We talked about those super sponges, the bile acid sequestrants earlier. Can you tell us more about those?
Yep, there's a class of prescription medications called bile acid sequestrants. And these are interesting medications and they work by binding to the bile acids in your intestines. And basically, they trap them and it prevents them from irritating your colon, causing the diarrhea. So, if soluble fiber is like a sponge, these are like super sponges.
Are they more effective than soluble fiber?
Yeah, I mean, they're really effective, probably the best overall. Some common ones include things like cholestyramine, also called questrin, cholesterol, and Welchol. They can either come as powders, granules, or tablets. And they're often prescribed for folks with BAD who haven't really found relief through lifestyle changes, so they're only available by prescription.
So those are the big guns.
Yeah, so like if other things aren't working, this is kind of like the next step.
This is all great information, but we all know stress can play a huge role in gut health. How does that factor into BAD?
Yeah, absolutely. Stress management is key. I mean, stress can affect how fast food moves throughout your digestive tract. It can stimulate diarrhea. It can make symptoms worse, especially inflammatory symptoms. It can even alter the composition of your gut microbiome.
So managing stress is a key part of the equation.
Yeah, and there's some really great mind-body practices that you can try. Things like mindfulness meditation, deep breathing exercises, and even yoga can have a huge impact on your stress levels.
What makes mindfulness meditation so special for gut health?
Yeah, mindful meditation is a big one. It basically encourages you to focus on the present moment without judgment, that you can help calm down your nervous system, reduce your anxiety. When you're practicing mindfulness, you become more aware of your thoughts, your feelings, but you're not getting like totally swept away by them.
So you're not ignoring stress, but learning to observe it without overreacting.
Right. So you're basically observing those stress signals, but you're not reacting impulsively. So by reducing that overall stress response, you're creating a more harmonious environment from your gut. Deep breathing exercises are another great tool.
It makes sense breathing deeply because when we're stressed, we tend to take those short, shallow breaths.
Right. So when you're doing belly breathing or deep diaphragmatic breathing, you're breathing from your belly, and this helps activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for relaxation. So, I mean, even a few minutes of focused deep breathing can make a difference.
Easy and accessible. I like it. And what about yoga? How does that help with BAD?
Yeah, yoga is great. I mean, it combines physical postures with deep breathing and mindfulness, and it can also help improve your digestion in a few different ways. It stimulates gut motility, it reduces stress, and it just generally promotes an overall well-being.
Are there certain types of yoga that are particularly beneficial?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of restorative yoga. For example, it uses gentle poses that you hold for longer periods, and that can be really calming for your nervous system. And then, certain poses like twists, these are thought to help kind of massage your internal organs, and some of these can actually help stimulate digestion.
This is all amazing. There's so many different approaches to managing BAD. It sounds like working with a doctor is essential to figure out the best plan.
Absolutely. And that's what I kind of wanted to shed light on this episode is that there's a lot of different approaches to managing this. It really highlights the importance of working with your doctor to figure out the best course of action for you and to know that everyone's different and what works for one person may not work for another. It is going to be a process of trial and error, and your doctor can help you navigate these choices and, personalize your treatment plan.
Let's talk about testing. Is there a way to confirm that bile acids are actually the culprit?
Well, absolutely. And that's a great point. So while the diagnosis is often based on your symptoms and your history, there are tests that can measure the bile acid levels in your stool. And this can kind of give you some more concrete evidence that bile acids are actually the culprit behind all of those digestive issues.
So it's not just a guessing game.
Absolutely. And, one important point that I want to get across is that there are other things that can mimic the symptoms of bad and can cause diarrhea, and they should not be overlooked. So that includes things like Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease, celiac disease, irritable bowel syndrome, and SIBO. And this is why you should always be in constant communication with your doctor because these things need to be worked up, and every single one of these diseases has a specific treatment for them. So in order to make sure you're getting to the right treatment, you definitely need the right diagnosis.
Getting the right diagnosis is key. What about tracking your progress at home? Any tips for that?
Yeah, so one really practical first step is to start keeping a food diary or food journal. This can help you figure out what your triggers are, the things that might be like making your symptoms worse.
So just like writing down everything I eat.
Absolutely. With phones now, you can pretty much write down anything, anytime, anywhere. So, you want to pay attention to what you're eating, when you eat, how you feel afterwards. You might start seeing some patterns and, don't be afraid to like get super specific. Write down the portion sizes, how you cook something, your mood afterwards, your stress levels when you were eating. The more detail you put in that diary, the more helpful it's going to be.
So I'm basically playing detective with my gut. This information helps both me and my doctor, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are pieces of information that your doctor's already going to ask for. So this not only helps you with that part, but also it helps you see how your management plan is working and helps you make adjustments if you need to. So it's about being empowered, being proactive, and pretty much taking control of your own health.
When should somebody talk to their doctor about all of this?
Well, if you're dealing with symptoms that are really bothering you and they're just not getting better, even though you're trying all of these things, it's definitely time to talk to your doctor.
Any advice on how to make the most of that appointment?
Great question. And as a doctor who sees patients like this, I want to tell you some tips that you need. So first of all, it's crucial to be your own healthcare advocate first and foremost. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I think sometimes people are like hesitant to bring up uncomfortable topics, but it's so important to be open with your doctor. Be prepared. Write down all of your symptoms, how often they're happening. Get your food journal ready. Tell the doctor how bad they are. Make a list of medications or supplements you're taking. And most importantly, write down any questions that you have. It's really easy to forget things when you're actually in the appointment.
Great advice. What if you feel like your concerns aren't really being addressed?
Yeah, I mean, as a patient, you deserve to feel heard. So if you feel like your current healthcare provider isn't the right fit or you're not getting the answers you need, I wouldn't be afraid to consult with another doctor for a second opinion.
Absolutely. Are there any support resources outside of, the doctor's office?
Yeah, online support groups can be super helpful. They give you a space to connect with other people that are going through the same thing. You can share tips, share resources, and just find emotional support. Knowing that you're not alone can be really reassuring. So places like Facebook often have a ton of support groups for things like this. They offer a lot of valuable info, treatment options, lifestyle recommendations, research updates, all that good stuff.
It's so important to know you're not alone in this. This has been incredibly insightful. Any final thoughts for our listeners who might be struggling with BAD?
Yeah, it's super important to remember, that managing bad, it's a journey, right? It takes time to figure out what works best for you, and there's always going to be ups and downs along the way. But be kind to yourself, celebrate those small victories, and don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into bile acid diarrhea. We hope this information was helpful and empowering for you. And remember, the Digest and Heal podcast is here to support you on your gut health journey. We'll be back next time with another fascinating deep dive into, a gut-wrenching topic. Until then, take care of your gut.